Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. Shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today? Late night recording, of course, because the D&D sessions are back on, baby. How did this one go? I think it was right. I think this one was more like a warm-up one again, because, you know, it's been 2 weeks. So it's been like, well, I guess technically it's been like 3 weeks since the last session, right? Does that make sense? Hold on. Didn't do it last week. Last week cancelled them. So the last one was on the 3rd of June or something. So it has been like 3 weeks since I've done it, and it was a bit of a process to warm up and get back into it. But good evening, everyone. And now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:17 p.m. on Monday, June 24th, 2024. Which is no surprise, you know. The first time back is always a little bit like, oh, you just got to sort of like figure out how to do things again. Like, how am I going to do X, Y, Z? Like, how's the story going to pan out? Because I can't even remember anymore. Luckily, we got into a point of a story where it's just like, oh yeah, this is like a part of a story which not had been set in stone for ages, but like had been ideated as a concept for this entire campaign for a while. So it was like one I knew decently well. I didn't know when exactly it was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen like this necessarily, but this is how it panned out. But I guess the long and short of it is basically that the player characters, the party, were out of town for ages, and then a lot of stuff has happened in that time period, which is sort of like, I very much want to give the vibe of like, oh yeah, the world is moving on no matter what decisions you end up making. As player characters, the world moves on without you, kind of, which, you know, at some points I'm sure that can feel very sort of disheartening in a sense, but in another place it allows them to like have to make decisions, rather than they're not playing through a story where it's like, oh, it's going to be a lovely walk in the park necessarily. They're going to have to make tough choices. Some, if they're, you know, ingenious enough, maybe they can save everyone, maybe they can make all these choices and do it in like expert time, but they're, you know, all likelihood might not be able to. So it gives room for rewarding for like, you know, coming up with very creative strategies or super paying attention, but also gives room for failure as well, which can make some very like nice, you know, crunchy moments, I think, in storytelling. Which is like how it should be. So a lot of stuff has happened. I'm not going to say necessarily it's a failure thing now, but it's like very much a catalyst, because around the time they left is when things were like, ooh, they're heating up a lot. But they're like, I'm not going to say they necessarily had to leave, but I'm not going to say that they weren't like incentivized to leave after either, because it was like a big investigation thing, and, you know, some roles on the back end from my end, and I was just like, okay, well, this is just how it has to go, but it's how the dice say. You know, obviously there's more to it, and I don't want to give everything away, because the players had just discovered something happened. I sort of like left them with a bombshell. I did very much like reactions though. This is a group that I have like the videos on. So when I said basically they were returning back to a place which they'd been to so many times throughout all the sessions, and then this time it wasn't there. I liked their reactions where we were just like, huh, what? Where'd it go? But they'll have to see what that means, I suppose. But it's very much heating up. As I said before, like the last sessions they've had sort of been like the mini boss leading up to the conclusion of Act 1. This one is like, okay, hey, we're ramping things up to Act 1. Things are not gonna come to a calamitous end, I suppose, in the next couple of sessions, but things are very much like ramping up. Like the next few sessions you're gonna have to make really important decisions. And that will determine a lot of what plays out in the world. And it's exciting. Also, as a side note, like I had this discussion with this group as well. I was like introducing a DM player character. You know, hesitant at first, because obviously there's a lot of horror stories around it where DM PCs tends to take over, etc., etc. But, you know, I trust in myself for being, and I trust in the friends that I do this campaign for, that we're, you know, we're all adults, we're all very reasonable people, that like, no, this is not going to necessarily happen, hopefully. And if it does, they would tell me. So I put a lot of thought into this character, because there were some issues I had with the campaign, not as them as players. I'm sure any good DM can make anything work in first case, but you always have to remember, this is my first campaign, so, you know, the further we stray from standard makes it harder and harder, I suppose, to know exactly what's going on. And I think one thing I definitely don't have a total grip on at the moment is combat and counterbalance. And one of the reasons I chalked up to the fact is that they have 3 characters, and any time that one of them goes down, there's only one of them who can heal another party member as well, I'm just like, oh, this makes it so swingy, which is like one of the main things I wanted to fix. They also like have no sense, they have like no front line, like all the characters are very squishy, which makes the combat very difficult. At least from a DM perspective, you know, to peek behind the curtain. You know, obviously, I try to play the monsters and characters in-game as if they were the monsters and characters in-game, but you also have it from, like, a DM perspective as well. It's like, okay, you know, what would be the smartest thing to do? It would be the smartest thing for every single monster to always run past the front line, make it to the back line, and beat up the healer, and beat up the DPS, and beat up the tank afterwards, right? But obviously that doesn't feel great to play, you know, it's like, what's the counter to that? Like, D&D doesn't always give you these options unless you want to stay like 300 feet away, which is not always possible. So, you know, you've got to find a good balance. But it makes it difficult with 3 people when only one of them is kind of tanky, because it's like, okay, well, I mean, this person's only kind of tanky, they can't like tank everyone. So, like, some people have to go, like, target the squishy people, but I'm like, okay, but now, like, does it feel unfair if I go, like, target the squishy person in this situation? Like, do I have a justification? I'm like, this is, like, way too much overthinking about the entire situation, isn't it? But yeah, there's basically some reasons I was like, let's try and introduce this DMPC. Part of, you know, part of it I'm sure is like, sort of not selfish and indulgent desire, whereas it's like, okay, well, you know, I do of course have like these ideas of player characters which I wanted to play. Let's see which one of these we can like sort of bring into fruition. And I was like, okay, this idea was basically like this artificer. I was like, I had this sort of like idea for a while. This artificer who's was a battlesmith, and whose battlesmith like steel defender was basically like another version of themselves. Because I was like, this seems like a cool concept, let's see where we can go with this. And then I expanded on it. I was like, what race do I want to play? Of course I want to play a kobold, they're my favourite race. I'd never actually gotten a chance to play a kobold more to like any sort of high level. So let's keep that going. And it's like, what sort of personality do I want? Well, I want them to be like a very open person, because as I said, all the characters in this campaign are very like sort of secretive and guarded. Like, it'd be nice to have someone who they can relax and open up with, I suppose, more so. And I was like, okay, then I also think it makes sense of this cat to be quite caring. And, you know, I was like, okay, then the direction I went in, it was like, oh, okay, it makes sense for this cat to be reasonably motherly, I suppose, in that sense. And then immediately I was like, what voice should this character have? And I went, Triffany Lottablog. From Bugsnax, because if you don't know, she has like a Minnesotan accent, and I said this all the time during a Bugsnax. I was like, she has my favourite character voice, maybe of all time. I love Triffany Lottablog's voice, and it's just like a thick Minnesotan accent. Like, I don't even think most people from Minnesota have that thick an accent, but I absolutely adore it, and it's 100% an accent I cannot do. So I'm like, 2 birds 1 stone, bring in like this accent which I absolutely adore, and to also learn how to do this accent. But of course, like, because there's just so much going on, I think, in this one, like warming up, and the fact that she wasn't introduced until 2 hours in ish, and honestly I didn't even think she might not have even been introduced in this session. I thought there was a decent chance that they would not have met her, but high roll in the encounter table, and I was like, alright, this seems like a good time if any. And I was just like, I cannot consistently stay in that accent. I have practiced, like I've tried my best to do the accent, and you know what's like my switching phrase is always like, oh, for sure, I've known him for years. And I just try and sort of channel the Triffany Lottablog energy. But like, I keep slipping. I find myself like slipping into like not like New York American, but like a different, like an American accent, and also like Scottish and Irish kept coming up, and it was just like, it's really hard to like consistently keep an accent you don't 100% like know how to do. Even harder still, like she has a steel defender companion which has a German accent, which I'm not that great at German accent. I can always do that, like, ooh, ja. That's so weird, sort of thing. But, like, that's obviously very stereotypical, right? It's like, anyone can do, like, a very stereotypical phrase in that accent, like, oh, it's so weird, or, what's a good one from, like, Australian, or, like, like, good day, mate, something like that. That's not a great one. Whenever I try to do an Australian accent, I now channel Gummy Goo from Digital Circus, where he goes, why aren't you or any of your friends here? Which I know is technically a specific type of Australian accent, but whatever. It's not too difficult to do a stereotypical line, I suppose, in an accent, which is why I'm just like, oh, for sure. You know, oh, you betcha. I sort of think a Minnesotan accent, but it's hard to do any phrase and any word in an accent, and also hard to improvise in that accent at the same time. But that's kind of like the point of it. That's why I like have so much fun doing these characters. Like some accents are like super easy to do. Like there's a character in the other campaign who's got like a Cockney accent, like bottle of water. Don't even worry about it. Don't sweat it. That sort of thing. That's like a very easy thing to slip into. And even if like if I slip out of a Cockney accent, I slip into like a more standard American accent. That is like, because he's got such a distinctive like timbre to his voice, it like makes it fine. You sort of like iron over those things. And I think like a Scottish accent was definitely not something that I felt like I could slip into that well. But channeling Clove from Valorant. wait, I got a rock in my shoe. That sort of thing. I don't think I have any major NPCs with a Scottish accent yet, but still. There's one with an Irish accent, but that's in the other campaign as well. But there's a lot of like accents to draw from as well. Like I'm not an expert in accents, and a thing I've done as well is also just like taken like phonemes from accents as well, and just sort of like put them on characters, because I want to give them like a unique voice. It's a thing where I want the important NPCs to be memorable. So I always I distinctly choose races to try and not have that much overlap between them, give them distinct designs, give them distinct like voices. So the important NPCs are ones to remember, ones that like if I start doing a voice, the characters will go, oh, that's that character, because that's kind of a point. And even if that takes like time to refine, then that's good, in my opinion. So like one of the characters in this campaign, I've taken like a lot of Japanese syllables from it as well. I mean, it helps that I know Japanese. And then if you want to do that, you just basically put vowels in between the consonants. And just pronounce some of the syllables of a Japanese, like using the Japanese letter rather than the English letter, and things like that. One thing I definitely need to do is start like changing up the way they speak, as well as the accent, because accent's one thing, but changing up like the structure of how you say a sentence. All of the characters thus far, I think, the majority are basically how I speak now, just with a different accent or like with different sounds here and there. It's very hard to like also change. Yeah, it's hard to improvise, put an accent on top, and then also structurally change how you speak in a character as well. Which is honestly, like a huge motivator for me in this doing D&D, is like being able to do that. Because I find it fun. I think it's fun to be able to just like put on different voices here and there. Anyway, the long short is that I could not keep in the Minnesotan accent. I think obviously is just like a warm up again. Also, I'm not like used to it, but I'm this character is probably going to stay around for a while, a DMPC, unless the DMPC thing sucks and people hate it. Then she'll just become like a regular NPC. But that's why I gave her like an accent which I didn't previously know how to do, and now I'm learning, because I'm just like, I just want to be able to like sort of bust it out, And would I say I'm particularly good at accents? No, but I think I'm good enough that if I do an accent, you would, like a popular accent, you would be able to identify it. And most of the time it's me just channeling characters. Australia, I just go like, crikey. Was that channeling? I don't know. That sounded a bit posh, I think, for Australian accent, but whatever. But you'd be like, oh yeah, that's probably Australian. And the Scottish one, of course, we've got Clove from Valorant. Whenever I try and do a Spanish one, I just remember Puss in Boots. But that was not Spanish as well. I don't know. I don't have that energy in me right now. But, one day, you'll be like, whoa, dear darling, you can nail all these accents. Anyway, so I don't know. It's just like interesting sounds. Like, oh, for sure. But the Minnesota one's interesting because a lot of what I try and do is I'll play someone's voice. In this case, I played a lot of like Triffany and Lottablog's voice clips, and I try and mimic it. But this is one like I felt like I couldn't actually mimic whatever sounds she was doing. Like I couldn't place them, and maybe it's because there's not like a cool Howcast video tutorial of like how to do a Minnesotan accent. Minnesota, like the other ones that I've tried to like learn as well. Shout out to my man. Oh, I don't even know what his name is. Hold on. Let's go find out his name. But it's like, let's say like, Howcast Spanish. No? Spanish accent. Oh, Video Jug is not Howcast. Don't play this music. I don't want to hear it. Shout out to my man, Gareth Jameson. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see what other accents may or may not crop up. And I don't know. And if anything, it's just like a tribute to Triffany and Lottablog. One of my favourite characters. She's great. Love bug snacks. I should really play the DLC at some point. Oh, for sure. You betcha. What else was like the other like trigger words? Oh, for sure. You betcha. For sure. Oh, yeah. Something like that, right? Hey? I keep thinking like Canadian as well. Oh, like, don't be such a hoser. But I don't even know if that's like good. I feel like, I always feel like, I'm sure this is not a unique thing, but it always feels like I do the accents better by myself, right? Just like the way you sing better by yourself. It's probably not actually necessarily the case. It's probably you just get more attempts at it. Like every time you do something wrong, you can just do it again immediately and just recorrect. I'm actually kind of excited. It'd be so great just to bust out. I don't know. I really like a Minnesota accent. Is it my favorite accent? I asked this to some random people at some point, being like, if you had to forcibly change your accent to a different accent, what accent would you choose? I think at the time I answered, like a transatlantic accent, you know, like the radio ones where I go like, yeah, see. I don't even know what to say. Hey, darling, if you do things like that, you'll never end up on the front page of the news. Something like that. I think that's what I said. But you know, I think like people don't really speak with a transatlantic accent anymore. But if it wasn't that, second place might be a Minnesota accent. I don't know. I quite like it. I don't know necessarily how popular or not it is. I always find it funny because people would just be like, oh, you know, I love a British accent, and then the obvious answer is like, which British accent? There's so many of them. Not to say that there aren't so many of other languages accents as well, but very stark difference I think between the received pronunciation and like a Scouse accent, which I can't even do. Like half of his accent. Can't do like so many of his accents. But if anything, it's a far cry from what I used to be. Because I remember in English class once we had like a lesson where we had to identify accents, and I actually could not identify like any of the accents. If there were accents I've heard before, but I was like, I have no idea what these are. Like I have no idea what these names are. I think the only one I identified was like a Cockney accent or something, and it was out of 10. I also thought because they were just like, oh, they're all speaking English, and I was like, oh, are they going to be accents like a French accent, Spanish accent, or German? But no, they were all English accents. So it was like Scouse, and like Liverpool, stuff like that. Welsh accent, and I was just like, oh, I straight up do not know what they sound like. But yeah, I don't know. You betcha. Something to work on. And plus, I do this like all the time. It's just giving me like another thing to do while I'm like by myself. I sing all the time to myself. Now, I talk in random voices to myself. I probably seem like an insane person if you just caught me, like overheard me by myself. You'd be like, what on earth is going on? Dear Darling's just like speaking to herself. And she's speaking to herself in a voice which is not her own. I just found the concept of that really funny. I'm going to put you. Oh, I just realised I didn't do my you betcha. So watch your space. 3 months time, I'm going to absolutely, well maybe not 3 months time. That's a bit ambitious. Watch your space. 6 months time, I'm going to absolutely nail this accent. You might be like 6 months and 3 months ain't that much of a difference, and yeah, that's a fair point. I don't know. It's just kind of fun to do accents. This is fun to do random improv, you know? Fun to do voices, fun to make characters. It's just hard. Made me wish I took more drama lessons back in school. Who would have known? The drama, music and art lessons I should have taken instead of all the science ones. No, that's not true. I do like science as well. Just need more hours in the day. More lessons to take. Anyway, I'm going to round this episode off here, so if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time. I was going to say bye-bye for now in a Minnesotan accent. For sure, I've known him for years. Oh, bye-bye for now. Something like that.